Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. I am Speedy4, and welcome to ModTro64, the show where I basically pick a game and talk about it. And welcome to a brand new year! And in this video, and two more after this one, we are going to be taking a look at 3 games in one. That's right, in this video, and 2 more later down the line, but not right after another because I want to cover other things, but for the time being, we are going to be taking a look at the Ace Attorney Trilogy on Nintendo Switch.
3 games originally made for the Game Boy Advance in 2001, and were Japanese exclusive, but were later ported to the Nintendo DS between 2005 and 2007 internationally. These 3 games were originally called Gyakuten Saiban, which literally translates to Turnabout Trial. But when it came out in the United States and Europe, it was renamed to Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, a title that focuses on the main character of this trilogy, Phoenix Wright, a fresh out of law school defense attorney looking to uphold justice and will do whatever it takes to prove his clients are innocent. This game was developed and published by Capcom, by the same development team that also deals with the Monster Hunter franchise, the Onimusha games, and the Sengoku Basara series. Now, many of us would take one good look at this and think, really? A game about being a defense attorney? Surely that's about as appealing as making a game about cutting the yard.
I'm sorry, what?
But you'd be surprised. As of recording this video, there is a total of 11 games in the Ace Attorney series, 6 mainline games, 2 spin-offs with 4 games in total, and 1 crossover game with the Professor Layton series. And don't you worry, I'll be talking about the Professor one of these days. But getting back to talking about the original trilogy, the 3 games were eventually remastered in HD on WiiWare from 2009 to 2012. But eventually, these remastered versions would later get ported to iOS, and then eventually the iOS versions would get ported to 3DS, Steam, Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and Nintendo Switch. However, there's one thing about this port in general. See, if you wanted this game, you either had to download it digitally on each console's respective store, or, if you prefer to have a physical version in your hands, import it from Japan.
Which is what I did, because physical media rules. But also because the Switch is region-free, so now I can properly display this game on my shelf. Because beforehand, the only other Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney games that I had was the first one on Nintendo DS, and Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney on 3DS.
However, not only do I have Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, but also Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Justice for All, and Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations.
But for the sake of being focused, we're only going to be taking a look at the first game in this trilogy in this video, because I don't want to have to cover all 3 games in one video, and the video would be like 2 hours long.
Hey!
Okay, that's different and you know it. Also, I do plan on covering the other 2 games in this trilogy, but I don't want them to be back-to-back. However, I am making a promise right here, right now. I will have covered all 3 games in the Ace Attorney Trilogy before the end of 2022. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at Ace Attorney Phoenix Wright.
Before we start though, I'm just gonna talk about how I plan on talking about this game, because the thing you have to realize about the Ace Attorney games is that the main thing about them is that they're visual novels. Games that have very little interactivity, and you progress the story with multiple clicks of the A button. But unlike most visual novel games, there is actually some level of interactivity with the Ace Attorney games, because the one thing you'll be doing most of the time is investigating scenes so that you find clues or evidence that you can later pull up in the court record when it's time for a trial, which the court record kind of acts like an inventory.
So while the game is a visual novel at its core, the gameplay is more like a point-and-click adventure game.
point-and-click adventure game developed and published by LucasArts. Grimoire, or its full stories Nutcracker, is a surprisingly high-quality title that's more of a...
Guys, I swear, this is different from all those other times I played a point-and-click on this channel. I swear!
Getting back on topic, each game in the Ace Attorney series is broken down into chapters. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney has 4 main chapters and a bonus 5th chapter that takes place right after the first game, but before the second game. However, I do not want to spoil each and every chapter, because what's the point of a murder mystery if I take the mystery out of the murder? So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to talk about the gameplay and give a brief summary of each chapter without spoiling who did it and how to get to those conclusions. Because these games are truly one of a kind and are worth the experience.
But let's get one thing cleared up right away. Even though this game takes place mostly in a courtroom with a bunch of legal terms getting thrown around all over the place, this isn't going to be a 100% accurate representation of the law. It's more so a game about pointing out contradictions and using the evidence in the court record to point the judge in the direction of the true committer of the crime and getting your clients declared innocent.
Despite that, if you do want an accurate representation of being a lawyer, defense, or otherwise, I would recommend taking a look at Legal Eagle's video of the first episode of the Ace Attorney anime, which itself is based on the games. It's informative and kind of fun to watch. But enough talk! Let's take a look at Ace Attorney Phoenix Wright. The first chapter is where you are taught how to play the game, and you are given the basics of the trial. The defendant? Larry Butts. The crime? The murder of Cindy Stone. However, you already know who actually killed Cindy Stone thanks to the opening cinematic. So this game is basically saying, hey, this is the guy who did it. Get him convicted. So this is how trials in Ace Attorney are done. You first listen to the witnesses testify about where they were at the time of the crime and what they saw. You then cross-examine the witnesses and look at the evidence in the court record. If there's something that doesn't line up with the testimony, you then present that evidence and point out the contradiction taking place. It's simple, but it's also very nuanced. So for now, let's actually talk about the first case you deal with. Phoenix's mentor, Mia Fey, is there to provide support and gives you hints on how to get the information you need through presenting evidence, while also in-game kinda gives Phoenix a pep talk to keep him focused on seeing the truth. After we discern the facts of the current case, we then get our eyewitness, Frank Saut. A clever little pun to the fact that this man here is our killer, and when it comes to the murder in question, he in fact, frankly, saw it. As we question him about what he saw and cross-examine him, the true brilliance comes out when we finally point out his bold-faced lie. Objection! When you hear this music, you know for sure you're on the right track. When the witness, or in this case, the actual criminal, starts to lose his composure under the weight of the law as the truth is being brought out into the light.
The music is one of the best things about Ace Attorney. There's so many unique tunes in this game.
Like the music used for some characters, or certain scenarios like the courtroom lobby. But things get really intense when we finally have Mr. Saut cornered. It's not only a bop, but also the game's way of saying, Yes, you have the criminal. Now bring it on home and put him in his place. It's a very satisfying tune, and that can be said for almost all of the music in Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. While there are some sampled instruments, they're mixed in with chiptune noises, giving the soundtrack a distinctly unique feeling. There's a super cool video that goes into better detail than I can, so if you want to learn a little bit more about Ace Attorney's music, then check the link in the description. Getting back on topic, while we may have Mr. Saw cornered, the trial isn't over yet.
While it may seem like that clock is running 3 hours slow, it proves nothing. How do you know it was running 3 hours slow on the day of the murder? If you can't prove that, you don't have a case.
So how do we prove the clock was running slow? Well, if we look at Cindy's passport, it was clear that this clock was set for Paris time, not American time. Or, as Phoenix would put it,
Well, Mr. Wright, you say the clock was already running slow on the day of the murder. Have you found evidence to support this claim?
of course, there is a piece of evidence in the court record that can prove my claim beyond a doubt.
Ha! Tough words. Let's see you pull this one off.
Let's see this evidence that proves why the clock was running slow.
Take that! The victim had just returned home from abroad the day before the murder. As we all know, the time difference between here and Paris is 9 hours. When it's 4 o'clock p.m. here, it's 1 o'clock a.m. the next day there. The clock wasn't 3 hours slow, it was 9 hours fast. The victim hadn't reset her clock since returning home. That's why the time you heard when you struck her dead in her apartment was wrong. Proof enough for you, Mr. Saw It? Or should I say, Mr. Did It? Yes, seeing a criminal break down like this is the game's way of saying, you did a good job, well done. So that's pretty much chapter 1. We managed to get Larry declared not guilty, and when you do get your clients declared not guilty, the audience cheers and throws confetti! Now, I know this isn't what happens in actual court cases, but you have to admit, it would certainly make court cases a lot more interesting if something like this happened. But now, we have to move on to the second chapter, and this is where the game takes you off the training wheels. Well, not fully off the training wheels, but you are given less information to work with. We see that our mentor, Mia Fey, is killed by a man in a light orchid suit with purple hair. Phoenix then manages to walk onto the crime scene, and we see a small girl sitting next to Mia's lifeless body, who we can immediately tell is Mia's sister. And this is where the investigation music kicks in. Which immediately means that things are getting real, and you need to take what you have learned from Chapter 1 and find out how to put Mia's killer behind bars. Also, this game teaches you that you can move around various scenes and observe various items in the room, some of which may contain clues you can observe later in the court record. We then talk with the girl from earlier, and we learn that her name is Maya, the same name that was on this slip of paper. Could Mia have actually written this? Or was it faked by our flamboyant businessman? Well, before we get a chance to talk to Maya any further, in comes bursting in one of my favorite characters in Ace Attorney. Alright, I'm Dick Gumshoe, see? Gumshoe? What an odd name. We received a report from the building across the way, see? Got a person saying that they saw a murder. It must have been that woman I saw. Anyway, I don't want either of you moving 1 inch, okay? Great. Just great. Maya, wait. She wouldn't have... Nah. Whoa! Excuse me? This word Maya here mean anything to you?
That's my name.
What? The victim drew this here note in her own blood, see? With her dying breath, she wrote down the killer's name.
killer. I'm not.
Case closed. You're coming down to the precinct, ma'am. Grim openings aside, he's one of my favorite characters in the series, cause when you first meet him, he seems like someone who would be super serious about his job, but the more you get into the series, while he is passionate about his job, he's actually more like a big puppy dog with a heart of gold, but is usually down on his luck. Especially when it comes to his coworker and higher up, Miles Edgeworth. I won't go into too much detail about him now, since we're not in the trial yet, but a friend of mine best describes Miles Edgeworth as a no-nonsense cutthroat prosecutor who will do whatever it takes to get the guilty verdict. And speaking of witnesses, you'll also be talking to a variety of people in this case. From Maya, Mia's younger sister who is a spirit medium in training, Marvin Grossberg, an older defense attorney who Maya originally asked for, but declined for unknown reasons, the lovable but slightly clueless Detective Gumshoe, and the witness, April May, who seems like a peppy yet cheeky girl, but is kind of flirty whenever you use big words around her.
So, in other words, she likes a man with a big dictionary. Dictionary. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Ooh.
But there's something fishy sticking out of her drawer. However, we can't look while she's here, because when we try, she gets super defensive, like she's hiding something. But eventually, after talking to a number of people and visiting April May's room one last time, we come across a bellboy bringing room service. And after talking to him, we learn she was staying with another person. Perhaps our light orchid killer? He then leaves, and we look in that drawer, and we find a wiretap.
Well, something is going on, and we're getting to the bottom of this.
At least as far as the first trial, because again, I don't want to spoil the case in question. But here we learn of another mechanic we can use when cross-examining a witness. On any statement, you can push the L button and press the witness for more information, which may pull out an additional testimony, which you can either press on to get even more information and progress the case, or if you spot a contradiction, shove the evidence right in their face. Eventually, we bring up the fact that April May is a conspirator to the man in the light orchid suit, who we later find out is named Red White. As to why, I'm not gonna mention it, because again, I don't want to spoil it, but I will say this. It's thanks to this case that we learn of an overarching plot that eventually comes to a close in Chapter 4, the DL6 incident. What is the DL6 incident? DL6 is nothing more than the sorting code the police gave the case. It was 15 years ago now. I received a request from a medium, a spirit medium.
A medium?
Her name was Misty Fay.
Faye!
Indeed. She was Mia's mother. She had been investigating a murder at the bequest of the police, and she failed. As a result, the police called her a fraud.
This is what Maya was talking about the other day.
I did all I could for her, and in the end cleared her of wrongdoing. That murder case, however, remains unsolved to this day. That case is the DL6 incident. However, I will say that the Fae women are not frauds, because despite being dead, Mia sometimes shows up when Phoenix is stressed out and feels hopeless. So we know they're genuine. However, at the end of Chapter 2, we have proven Maya is in fact innocent. And the Faye & Company Law Offices has now been rebranded to be Wright & Company Law Offices, with Maya acting as Phoenix's assistant. So that's Chapter 2. And now we move on to Chapters 3 and 4. Yet I'm only going to give general summaries of what you'll be dealing with in those two chapters. Our latest case involves the death of an actor named Jack Hammer, who was killed on set of a filming studio called Global Studios while filming a kids' TV show called The Steel Samurai, where we must defend our client, Will Powers, who at the time of the murder was asleep in his trailer, but the security guards supposedly saw Powers in his Steel Samurai costume walking towards the scene of the crime. It's a good case with a colorful cast of characters like Wendy Oldbag, an ex-star who is now the studio security guard, Penny Nichols, a production assistant who is friends with Mr. Powers, Sal Minella, the director of the Steel Samurai show, and is incredibly cringe because he speaks in leet speak.
Cringe, cringe, cringe!
Cody Hackins, a fan of the Steel Samurai and a key witness to the crime scene, and the diva and head producer of the show and Global Studios as a whole, Dee Vasquez, which is a pun on diva and a reference to the Vasquez Rocks in California, which is one of the world's most recognizable filming locations in cinema and television.
Which is kind of fitting considering we're investigating a film studio.
Now, this is the case where the game does not hold your hand at all. Now you have to use all your brain power to pay attention to the evidence and testimony to properly solve this case. The only thing you know for sure is that Will Powers is innocent. You just have to figure out the truth behind the case and expose a secret going on at the studio.
But you're still probably wondering why. Why are we playing as a defense attorney? Well, this is basically thanks to Shu Takumi,
who worked alongside Shinji Mikami of the Biohazard team, or as we would know the series in the West, Resident Evil. Takumi and Mikami did some work on the 1997 PS1 classic Dino Crisis, which the best way to describe that game is Resident Evil, but it's Jurassic Park.
There are dinosaurs, living dinosaurs, holy shit, what the fudge?
Well, after that, Shu Takumi was brought on to direct the second game, and after the release of Dino Crisis 2, Mikami gave Takumi the opportunity to make any kind of game he wanted to make. So, with a small team of 7 people, Takumi originally conceived the earlier idea of Ace Attorney as a detective-themed visual novel using a joint reasoning system where the player would correct the deductions of a detective, and a court system that would let the player point out contradictions. However, the idea of a detective being a lawyer was brought up, and they immediately began to work on the Ace Attorney we would come to know and love. However, the most fascinating about this bit of gaming history was the fact that Ace Attorney was originally intended to be on the Game Boy Color.
Could you even imagine what that would look like?
But after seeing a demo of Mega Man Battle Network on a prototype Game Boy Advance, the development team switched over to Game Boy Advance, and Atsushi Inaba, the game's producer, was so impressed with the first game, he requested that this becomes a trilogy.
And you can see where that got us. 3 of these games from Game Boy all the way to Switch.
Which leads us into the fact that 49.4% of you people watching this video are not subscribed to the channel.
Okay, come on. I mean, you clearly like watching these videos, and you go out of your way to watch them, so why not just remove the extra steps and just hit the subscribe button? You'll not only get them the moment they come out, but if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified the literal second it goes up. So, why not consider subscribing to the channel? You'll not only be supporting the channel, but you'll also be motivating me to make more quality content for you to watch at your leisure.
So, with that out of the way, let's talk about Chapter 4. In this case, we need to prove that the killer of the man on the boat was not Edgeworth?
Edgy, my boy, what have you gotten yourself into?
So, since Edgeworth is our client, he obviously can't prosecute himself. So instead, this case introduces us to his mentor, Manfred von Karma. a ruthless man who has a perfect 40-year record of gaining guilty verdicts, and has a bunch of rumors around him of supposedly having falsified evidence and influencing the witnesses. We also meet some other characters like the return of Larry Butts, who runs a hot dog stand in the middle of winter and turns out to be a crucial witness later on, but I'm not saying why. An old man who runs a boat rental shop but is a little senile and thinks he runs a noodle shop called The Wet Noodle. And Lotta Hart, a country gal who's from Country University in the heart of the heartland.
So, either Kentucky or Indiana. Most likely Tennessee.
But the interesting thing about her is that while some characters do reoccur in the games they're introduced and in other games, but mostly are either mentioned by name or make a slight cameo. However, Lotta here is one of the few reoccurring characters to show up in other Ace Attorney games. But this is the case where she makes her debut. And this is the case where we learn more about the DL6 incident, which was mentioned in Chapter 2. The reason why is because the statute of limitations in the Ace Attorney world is a time limit where a case is given a set number of years to be solved before the case is closed.
Permanently.
It's been 15 years since the DL6 incident and when this case takes place. Its statute of limitations will be due in 3 days, and a lot of suspects and details are eerily similar to DL6. Is this a coincidence? Or will Phoenix Wright uncover a 15-year-long mystery and finally solve this case?
You'll just have to find out for yourself. Also, I know it's very early to even think about Christmas while we're currently in February, but if you ever find yourself looking for a game to play around Christmas time, then I would consider playing Ace Attorney Phoenix Wright, because Chapter 4 takes place on Christmas.
But if we're speaking about Ace Attorney as it was originally, then the story would have been done here, proving Edgeworth innocent, clearing up a 15-year-long murder mystery, and getting the real killer behind bars, and the credits rolling. But we're not quite done yet, considering this trilogy is a port of the iOS versions of the 3 games, which they themselves were remasters of the DS versions, which means Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney has one more chapter. This is by far one of my favorite cases, and if I had to rank the cases in this game, it would look something like this.
What do you think of my picks? Feel free to leave a comment down below and tell me your thoughts. I would love to hear what you consider to be the best cases from Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, from your favorites to your least liked.
But I am gonna go a little bit into this case, because this is one of the longest cases in the game. But first, a little look into its relation to the first game. See, as I mentioned before, this game was a port of a iOS remake of a WiiWare remake of a DS game, which in itself is a remake of a Game Boy Advance game, and as you can imagine, being a Game Boy Advance game, it can only hold so much data. So, there were only 4 cases originally. Chapter 1, Turnabout Trial, Chapter 2, Turnabout Sisters, Chapter 3, Turnabout Samurai, and Chapter 4, Turnabout Goodbyes. But it wasn't until it was brought over to the West and it became a DS game. However, a DS cartridge can hold a little more room than a Game Boy Advance cartridge. So, the developers over at Capcom thought of a case that would not only provide a longer, more fulfilling gameplay experience to the original game, but also showcase some of the features of the original DS that the Game Boy Advance could not do. Mainly, using the touchscreen to move a piece of evidence in 360 degrees, but also the microphone for blowing dust away. I remember when I was playing the DS original that I had a blast playing through this and using the DS in innovative ways at the time. But since this is on Switch, some of the stuff has been reworked to work properly on consoles, mainly switching over to button controls. Or so you would think!
Okay, so as I was in the middle of writing the script for this episode, I wanted to see if you could still do what Chapter 5 was originally intended for. You know, showcasing the power of the Nintendo DS. What with the touchscreen and built-in microphone. Now, obviously, the
The Switch does not have a built-in microphone, but it does have a touchscreen. And as you can see as I tippy-tap the screen, you can still dust for fingerprints. And then you just push the X button to blow the dust away. They didn't have to do this, but the fact that they did and kept it in here makes me really, really happy that they left it in here.
Getting back on topic, this case kinda has some similarities to Chapter 4, mainly about being a previously solved case. But instead of the DL6 incident, this case takes a look into the SL9 incident. But the way this case starts off is incredibly cinematic. Two murders taking place at the same time in two different places. Also, this case takes place in between the two games. It takes place right after Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, but before Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Justice for All. In this case, we have a different character taking Maya's place as Phoenix's partner, Emma Skye, a young girl who has a profound interest in forensic science and wants to be a forensics investigator when she grows up.
Also, fun fact, forensic science is also called criminalistics. I don't know why, but that sounds funny to me.
As I stated previously, even though I have not talked about each of the other cases in depth, I do want to go deeper into this one. But if you have any interest in playing Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, skip to this time to avoid spoilers. I'll give you a few seconds. Alright, moving on. Emma came to Phoenix's office because Emma originally asked for Mia, but as we both know, she's dead. And we don't have Maya with us, so we can't contact her either. But Emma does remind Phoenix of Maya, so he decided to hear her out. And we learn that Emma's sister, Lana Skye, is on trial for killing a detective. Lana is saying she did in fact kill him, but she seems incredibly lax on him, and her actions say otherwise. Or at least it wouldn't make sense if she did in fact kill someone. So we immediately know something is not right. We do some investigating over at the prosecutor's office, but we are halted by an officer.
Why do I hear Western music? What do we have here now? An hombre.
If my intuition is correct, in actuality, this is...
this is Jake Marshall, a patrolman who used to be a detective. He's keeping an eye on the crime scene to make sure nobody gets too close, so we can't take a look around for evidence. We do end up speaking a little bit to the witness in tomorrow's trial, a lunch lady named Angel Starr. We asked her a couple of questions on what she saw, and we can already get some personal bias towards prosecutors in general. Later, we end up going to the High Prosecutor's office, and we already know whose office this is just by looking at it. So we talked to Edgeworth about how he got mixed up into this mess this time. The body was found in the trunk of his car, and the knife that was used in the murder belonged to Edgeworth, which was a knife he kept in his toolbox. He was originally at the police department accepting the King of Prosecutors Award. He had returned to the office around 5:12 p.m., 3 minutes before the murder took place. We later visit the police department and talk with Detective Gumshoe, who for some reason isn't on this case. We also get introduced to the Blue Badger. Even though he looks nothing like a badger, he is seen as the police department's mascot, but this dancing cutout of him was made by Gumshoe, which, after talking to him, gives us a letter for us to give to Officer Marshall so we can properly take a look around the crime scene. And after looking around, we already know that the body was found in the trunk of Edgeworth's car.
We then picked up a cell phone.
We also see that there was a call around the time of the murder, so we pushed redial and... So, this is Lana's cell phone, and she was calling Emma at the time of the murder. But for what reason? It's the second day, and we're in the trial. Miss Starr comes up to the stand, and despite being a lunch lady, she too used to be a detective, and talks about what she saw. So by the end of this trial, we then learn that this murder was not premeditated. The facts of the case don't line up with the evidence. Miss Starr lied about where she saw the crime and what she actually saw. The knife in question is a red herring, and there's a piece of cloth stuffed into the muffler of Edgeworth's car. However, we then get introduced to the chief of police in the latter half of the trial.
Excuse me? Knock, knock.
Who's there?
What's with this guy? A strange, stuffy aura seems to be filling the courtroom.
Hey, the temperature rose 5.7 degrees when that man came in.
Who on earth is he?
Ah, it's you!
Oh! Sorry I'm late, Aji. The roads were packed. It's just me. Long time no see. Hey, Aji. How you been? Swim much these days?
Oh, hello. No, I've been so busy.
Busy smidgy, Aji, my boy. You have to make time to relax.
Yes, indeed.
Udgy. Seems to be his nickname for the judge.
I'm afraid you're right. Very afraid. Sorry, but who are you?
Aha! So you're Righto, the attorney. I've heard good things about you, son.
Thanks?
So sorry about our little worthy giving you all that trouble, eh? You know, we should all go swimming together sometime. Jolly.
Little Worthy?
Mr. Wright, you don't know the district chief of police?
Chief of police?
He's the top-ranking police officer in the entire district.
Name's Gant, Damon Gant. Pleased to meet you, everyone.
Damon Gant plays a very big part in this story, and as what you can surmise from his introduction, he's one of my favorite characters to voice, cause for some reason I give him a voice that sounds like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises.
You think the law is your ally, Worthy? You merely adopted the law. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man, but by then it was nothing to me but blinding.
What in the blue blazes are you saying, Gant?
You despise criminals. I can feel it. You and me, we're the same. If you want to take them on alone, you'll know what's needed.
It's just so fitting, I don't know why. But he's come to tell us that at the same time a murder was going on at 5:15 in the prosecutor's underground parking lot, a detective was murdered in the police department's evidence room. However, after we asked the chief some questions and after cross-examining him, we learned that the detective that was murdered at the police department is the exact same detective in the underground parking lot. 2 different locations at the same time with the same man being murdered. What is going on? Well, now we have ourselves 2 murders we need to solve, so we're going straight to the visitor's chamber and see who the suspect is.
Oh my god, you gotta be friggin' kidding me.
This is Officer Mike Meekins. I didn't mention him earlier because he had a report to give to Edgeworth, but it wasn't really relevant to the current case on hand. However, it actually was relevant, and he got arrested afterwards. So he tells us that while he was guarding the evidence room, since Marshall wasn't around at the time, he saw Goodman enter the evidence room. Only he didn't know who he was and thought of him as suspicious. But when he went to ask for his ID,
Suddenly he pointed a knife at me. What? Sir, I assure you I was as flustered as you are right now, so I whooped and leapt at him.
Detective Goodman pointed a knife at him?
Do unto others as they do unto you. My father's own words, sir. What happened then? Oh, my eyes, sir. Everything went white. When I woke, I was here.
Right.
which is very suspicious, because if Goodman had his ID, there was no need to pull a knife on him. So we head to the police department to get some answers. However, we need to convince Officer Marshall to let us through. So, after we're done talking to Miss Starr about the trial, we then ask her why she's so biased towards prosecutors. It was because of the SL9 incident. See, after the case was solved, every detective involved in the case, except for Goodman, got reshuffled or let go. Jake Marshall was reassigned to be a patrolman, and Ms. Starr was let go by Lana Skye, who went from being a detective to becoming chief prosecutor. So she knows there's something fishy going on with SL9, but she then tells us that if we want to learn more, we need to give Officer Marshall a Salisbury steak lunch. We also make our way over to the Criminal Affairs Department to ask Gant for permission to investigate the evidence room. Actually, I was wondering if I could ask you a favor.
Well, I never thought the day would come when Wright asked me for help.
I was wondering if we could investigate the evidence room?
Now, Righto.
Actually, I'm sorry. I don't need to investigate after all.
Righto, please. Do I look like a selfish man?
Huh?
Heck, if anyone asked me, "Sir, can I borrow $50?" I'd give him $50. No problem. So go ahead. Investigate that room to your heart's content. Knock yourself out.
So we get our guest ID, give Marshall the steak lunch, and he not only lets us get in, but he also lets us ask him a couple questions about his position as the guard for the evidence room and why he wasn't around at the time. So after the SL9 incident, he's lost the passion for his job and says he comes and goes as he pleases and lets the security system do his job for him. We also end up getting a record ID log of everyone who's gone in and out of the evidence room, and we know that one of them is Goodman, but there are 3 numbers on this list that we don't know of. So we go in and find Gumshoe. He tells us that not only does he have a locker here, but also he sometimes uses this evidence room like an art studio. We look at some evidence and Gumshoe tells us about the security system for the lockers.
This place is more high-tech than you might think. Every locker is fixed so that only one detective can open it.
Using this ID card?
Well, that's the thing, pal. ID cards can be lost. Why, I'm on my 3rd card since entering the force already.
That sounds like a lot.
Yeah, but even I can't lose my own right hand.
Right hand? Oh, you mean your fingerprint?
Exactly, pal. The lock for each locker is coated with a fingerprint. So the only locker we can open is our own.
Funny. They look like normal lockers.
These are the latest models. There's a trick to the handles, see?
The handles?
On the other side of the handles is a sensor, and if the wrong person touches it,
Zap! You get a shot.
if that's what happened, my hair would be black and smoking every day. In any case, the locks aren't that obvious. There's even some people in the force that don't know about the fingerprint locks.
We also learned that one of the IDs belongs to Edgeworth, so he was in the evidence room before the crime took place. We also used the luminol testing fluid to detect any blood traces. And that is another cool thing about this case. Using actual items used for forensics, like luminol being an actual compound you can use for detecting blood, or, a little bit later, aluminum powder, which is actually used for detecting fingerprints on different surfaces. It's really cool because while most of the stuff that happens in Ace Attorney isn't exactly 100% accurate most of the time when talking about the law, but this case has a stern focus on forensics, and that's just legitimately cool.
So, after using the luminol solution, we find bloodstains on the floor in both the prosecutor's office and the evidence room, one on Gumshoe's locker and another one on another locker but was wiped away. There is one thing I will say that is a little bit of a hassle: backtracking. Now, backtracking isn't as bad as everyone makes it out to be, but it can be a real hassle when you have to go to room 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 just to talk to someone, exhaust their dialogue trees, and get the information and evidence we need just to walk all the way back just to use one piece of evidence to get more information. It's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, but it can be a real hassle sometimes, especially if you're a new player and this is your first introduction to the Ace Attorney games. Back on topic, we then talk to Edgeworth about what happened in court and ask him about his visit to the evidence room. He reminds us that that was when Gann had asked him to take a piece of evidence back to the prosecutor's office, being a screwdriver from a completely different and unrelated case. After having our chat with Edgeworth and updating the ID record log, Edgeworth gives Emma aluminum powder, used for detecting fingerprints like I've demonstrated before. But this time we take a look at that bloody handprint that was wiped away, and upon close examination, this print belongs to Officer Marshall?
Marshall? What's that boy's bloody handprints doing on a locker? Oh, something's not right with that boy. I think right here is a good cutoff point. So if you want to find out why Marshall's bloody handprints were on a locker, and why Lana seems so insistent that she's the actual murderer, then play the game for yourself.
It's an incredibly unique series that is full of charm, mystery, and suspense, with dialogue that's both witty and silly, while at the same time offers some intense action and some serious drama. And while I won't talk too much about the other two games, but later games offer new mechanics to the gameplay and new ways to solve cases. Also, the music gets even better, and this game, along with its two sequels, spawned a series, with Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Dual Destinies, and Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Spirit of Justice, along with Miles Edgeworth getting a spin-off series, Miles Edgeworth, Ace Attorney Investigations, and a sequel which never came out of Japan, and The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, a series that's set in Victorian England and Meiji-era Japan, setting up as a sort of prequel to Ace Attorney's court system. And we play as Phoenix Wright's ancestor, Ryonosuke Naruhodo, and already has 2 games which you can buy for Switch.
And while I would love to dive right into the second and third games, however, I'm gonna put a stop to myself here and cool my jets. Besides, this video can serve as a small introduction to the series as a whole, and if what I've talked about so far has interested you in playing Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, then go get it, right now. Now, part of me would say that if you wanted to import a copy directly from Japan, that's totally viable. However, realistically, you'd be better off buying this from each console's respective digital stores, or directly from Steam. Or if you're one of those weird purists that has to play the games on the consoles that they were originally meant for, then you can technically still get the DS originals. I mean, good luck finding these at a decent price. I mean, even though it was a long time ago, I remember I had to pay $20 just for this copy alone. But no matter how you do it, I would highly recommend getting and playing Ace Attorney Phoenix Wright. It's a truly unique game series that I would love to see Capcom continue to make. And I also hope for more games that play with the Ace Attorney formula, like the upcoming Tyrion Cuthbert, Attorney of the Arcane, or Aviary Attorney. Oh yeah, I'll talk about this at some point, believe you me. But for now, I think it's time to
put this video to a close.
Hold it! You can't end the video!
Wait, why not?
Because you haven't talked about the ladder versus stepladder joke.
What's the difference?
What's the difference? They're vastly different!
You need to stop judging things based on cultural assumptions, Arrow.
I can't believe I walked right into that one.
I promise to talk about it in Justice for All.
Oh, okay.
However, before I go, let me ask you a few questions. Do you like this video? Would you like to see more videos like this in the future? Well, then if you said yes to either one of those questions, then you should consider joining my Patreon, where you can help support ModTro64 in a small way. We have the $1 tier, where you'll get your name at the end of the credits, as well as access to special channels in the official ModTro64 Discord. And then we have the $3 tier, where you'll get everything from the previous tier, but you'll also get a custom icon drawn by yours truly, as well as a special shout out at the end of the video. And then we have the maximum $5 tier, where you'll get everything from the previous tier, but you'll also get a custom wallpaper drawn by yours truly of your OC, persona, fursona, or just your favorite character from a video game, anime, movie, or cartoon. It's 100% optional, but the support does go a long way with helping me keeping the channel going and making it better for you to watch. So if any of this sounds good to you, or if you want to be featured in the next episode of ModTro64, just go to www.patreon.com/speedy4. So now, if you excuse me, I'm going to enjoy myself a delicious burger. Nothing like good quality cuisine in these here United States of America.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, why not consider giving it a like? And while you're at it, why not hit that subscribe button down there? That way you'll be able to get my videos in your subscription feed the moment they come out. Or if you want to know the second they come out, hit the notification bell. Don't forget to check out my Patreon, or if you want some merch, feel free to check out my TeePublic, Redbubble, and Displate stores. I plan on updating my catalog with some new designs, but if you see anything you like, feel free to buy it. I don't ever plan on removing my designs unless something beyond my control happens. But you'll not only get something super cool, you'll also be supporting an artist on his quest to make a fun show on YouTube. But for now, it's time to thank the patrons! And for the first time ever for this year, I get to thank the $1 patrons, or rather the only $1 patron, but even if it's just $1, I thank you very much for your support. And a special thank you goes out to my $3 patron, Laurie. The start of a new year with a new icon. That Sylveon is very cute. And a massive thank you to my $5 patrons, Callus Vallis, the champion of anime waifus and Smash. Your support is super appreciated, and I'm looking forward to tackle this year with you. And another massive thank you to Veruca Wanoa, Gamer Princess of Terraria. Your support is also super appreciated, and I also look forward to this new year with you. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.